The crash in the giant shadow. The sky turned red as Jacob's ship broke through the alien planet's atmosphere. Smoke filled the cockpit. Lights flashed, alarms screamed. Jacob grabbed the controls, trying to slow the fall. Come on, hold together. Just a little longer. But the ship didn't listen. It hit the ground hard. The sound of metal tearing filled the jungle. The ship skidded across the trees, smashing branches and kicking up dirt, until it finally stopped with a loud crash. Silence followed. Then came a small groan. Jacob slowly opened his eyes. Blood dripped from his forehead. His arms shook as he unbuckled his belt and crawled out of the broken hatch. His suit was torn, his helmet cracked. Supplies were gone. But he was alive. He looked around. Strange blue trees rose high above him, their leaves glowing faintly. Thick vines hung down like snakes. The air was heavy and warm. It was beautiful. And dangerous. This isn't the planet I was supposed to land on, Jacob muttered. Where the hell am I? He limped through the trees looking for anything useful. Water, food, shelter. Minutes passed, then he felt it. The ground shook. Once, then again, like footsteps, heavy ones. Jacob froze. The shaking grew louder. Tree branches snapped in the distance. Birds flew out in panic. Then, a shadow appeared. Huge. Moving. Jacob hid behind a thick tree, his breath caught in his throat. A figure stepped into view. It was a woman, but not like any woman Jacob had seen before. She was at least 12 feet, tall, with smooth lavender skin that shimmered in the sunlight. Her hair was white like snow and fell past her waist in thick waves. Her eyes glowed gold, and sharp fangs peeked from her lips. She wore strange armor made of bone and cloth. Across her back was a huge spear taller than Jacob himself. She sniffed the air, then turned her head, right toward Jacob. His heart raced. He ducked behind the tree. Nope. Too big. She's gonna eat me. But it was too late. She saw him, in one graceful leap she crossed the clearing. Jacob ran. He didn't look back. He didn't think. He just ran. Through bushes, under roots, across fallen trees. But she was fast. Every few seconds the ground shook again. She was getting closer. Jacob slipped and tumbled down a small hill, landing in a patch of soft grass. When he looked up, she was standing over him. Her massive shadow covered his whole body. Her gold eyes stared at him, unblinking. She reached down. Jacob screamed and threw a rock at her. The rock bounced off her chest and rolled away. She blinked once, then tilted her head, confused. Jacob braced himself. This is it, I'm food. But instead of grabbing him, she reached for something else on the ground, his backpack. She picked it up with 2 fingers, turning it slowly, examining it like a curious child. Then she looked back at Jacob. He expected fangs, growls, roars. Instead, she smiled, a strange, soft smile, and then she walked away. Just like that. Jacob blinked. What just happened? He stood slowly, still shaking. She didn't eat me. She didn't even try to hurt me. What kind of predator plays with food? He looked toward the trees where she vanished. Maybe she's gone, he whispered. He turned to walk the other way, but after 10 steps he heard it again. Thump, thump, thump. He turned around. The giantess was following him, still holding his backpack. She waved at him, just once, and tilted her head again, almost playful. Jacob's jaw dropped. You've got to be kidding me. He ran again, and again she followed. Not fast, just close enough to let him know she wasn't done with him yet. He dove into a cave, rolled behind a rock, and held his breath. Minutes passed. He peeked out. She stood at the cave entrance, crouched low so her glowing eyes met his. She set the backpack down in front of the entrance and walked away. Jacob sat in silence, heart still racing. His thoughts were a storm. She's not normal. She's not dumb. She found me, studied me, gave me my stuff back. Why? He crawled to the backpack and opened it. Everything was still inside. Food rations, med kit, his water pack, untouched. He sat back, confused more than afraid now. She had the perfect chance to eat me. He looked out of the cave, but she didn't. And somewhere, far off in the jungle, a giantess with glowing eyes looked up at the stars and smiled again. The cage of kindness. Jacob woke up to the sound of birds and wind. Sunlight filtered into the cave. His body ached and his mind was still spinning from yesterday's madness. He reached for his backpack and paused. It was gone. He looked around, heart pounding. Then he saw it, just a few feet away, resting on a pile of smooth stones, with fresh fruit placed beside it. Jacob blinked. The giantess came back. He stood slowly, cautious, and looked outside the cave. There were no sounds of footsteps, no shadows. He picked up the fruit. It was purple, soft and warm, still fresh. She had left it for him. Again. This was the second time. Jacob didn't understand. Her. Was this a trap, or something else? Later that day, Jacob ventured out, careful to stay hidden. He found a small stream, cleaned his wounds, and returned to the cave. But something had changed. There was now a wall of vines in front of the cave, tied together with thick branches like bars, not tight enough to keep him in, but clear enough to send a message. She had made a cage. For him. Jacob stared at the vines in disbelief. She thinks I'm a pet? He touched the vines. They weren't tied with anger or force. They were shaped carefully, almost gently, like someone trying not to hurt a small creature. That night, he couldn't sleep. He heard something outside. When he peeked through the vines, he saw her. The giantess. She sat across the clearing, legs crossed, arms resting on her knees. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the moon. Soft wind blew through her white hair. Her golden eyes blinked slowly. There was no anger in her face, no hunger. She looked peaceful, lonely. Jacob whispered, "What are you?" She tilted her head slightly, as if she heard him, but said nothing. Then she stood and walked into the trees, silent like a ghost. The next morning, the vine cage was still there, but a small pile of new things had appeared beside it. A soft bundle of leaves, shaped like a pillow, a long branch with sharpened ends, maybe a tool or weapon, a round wooden bowl filled with sweet-smelling water. Jacob stared. "She's bringing me gifts?" He untied one of the vines and stepped out. No traps, no attack. He touched the pillow leaf, then sniffed the water. It smelled like honey and flowers. He drank it slowly. It was safe, cool, refreshing. As he sat down trying to make sense of it all, he heard a gentle sound, like a hum. He turned. She was there again. But this time, she didn't come closer. She sat at the edge of the trees and began carving something into the ground with her finger. A symbol. Then she looked at him, pointed to it, and waited. Jacob hesitated, then knelt beside her drawing. Carefully, he drew a shape back, a small stick figure. Her eyes lit up. She drew a larger one next to it. She pointed at herself. She was trying to communicate. Jacob's voice was soft. You don't want to hurt me, do you?" She smiled, a real, warm smile. Then she drew a heart between the two figures. Jacob stared at it. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't romantic. It was kind. She stood slowly, towering over him, and placed her large hand gently on her chest. Then, with a single, graceful motion, she pointed that hand toward him. He didn't understand the gesture completely, but he felt what it meant. "I don't want to hurt you. I care." Jacob's breath shook. "You made a cage to keep me safe." She nodded once, then disappeared into the trees again. That night, Jacob didn't sleep behind the vine cage. He laid on the soft leaves she left, ate the food she brought, sipped from the flower water. And when he closed his eyes, he didn't dream of monsters. He dreamed of a lonely giantess, sitting under the stars, just waiting for someone to understand her. A meal meant for her. Jacob woke to the smell of something strange. It wasn't smoke. It wasn't flowers. It was something warm, thick, and tasty. His stomach growled before his eyes even opened. He sat up and looked outside the cave. There she was again, the giantess. She had built a small fire near the stream. Smoke drifted into the air and a large pot hung over the flames. She stirred it slowly with a stick longer than Jacob's whole arm. Her white hair was tied back now. Her eyes focused on the cooking. Jacob stepped out of the vine doorway slowly. The vines were untied this time. She had left it open, an invitation. She looked at him and smiled gently, then pointed to the pot and made a soft chirping sound, like a welcome. Jacob hesitated. Please don't be a trap. He walked over. The fire was warm and the scent from the pot was delicious, sweet, earthy, and rich. She reached beside her and lifted a giant wooden bowl carved from a tree trunk. She poured some of the stew into it. Then, from a smaller bowl, she poured a tiny portion into a stone cup and handed that to Jacob. He took it carefully. It was still warm. He sipped. His eyes widened. It was good. Really good. Nutty, spicy, full of strange but soft vegetables. Nothing tasted like meat. She watched him, waiting for his reaction. He gave her a small thumbs up. She blinked, confused. Then he smiled and nodded. Her eyes lit up, and she laughed, a soft melodic sound like wind chimes. Jacob said, "So you eat plants, not meat?" She didn't understand the words, but she saw how he patted his chest and pointed to her bowl. She nodded. Then she pointed to him, mimicked biting with her sharp fangs. Then shook her head. No. Jacob stared. She was telling him directly. She didn't eat his kind. He let out a long breath. All this time I thought I was dinner. You were just trying to feed me. She tilted her head and smiled again. Jacob sat beside her. They ate in silence. The flames crackled. For the first time, he felt safe near her. Her size didn't scare him anymore. Her fangs didn't feel like threats. Her eyes didn't shine with hunger. They glowed with something gentler. Later that day, she led him to a large, flat stone near the edge of the forest. Using sticks and berry juice, she began drawing pictures. Her drawings showed simple stories. A large figure like her sitting alone, then finding a small figure, him. Jacob understood. She was telling him about them. He took the stick and drew back. A circle with stars. His ship. The crash. Her eyes widened in understanding. Then she drew something new. A large creature. Another giantess. Lying still. Crosses on her eyes. Then, the smaller figure, her alone. Jacob felt his chest tighten. He looked at her. She nodded slowly. Her people were gone. She was the last. Jacob looked at her face, now quiet and still. She had survived. Alone. For years. And now he understood why. She was being so gentle with him. She didn't want to eat him. She didn't want to kill him. She didn't want to be alone anymore. As the sun began to set, she returned to the fire and stirred the stew again. But this time she didn't eat much. Instead, she sat close to Jacob, resting her arm near him like a protective wall. He looked up at her massive face. "You're not a monster." She didn't respond, just closed her eyes and listened to the wind. Jacob leaned back against her arm, his body, so small next to hers, finally relaxed. Maybe this wasn't just survival anymore. Maybe it was something new, something strange, something beautiful. But deep in the jungle, something else watched. A different kind of giant. Not kind, not alone, not peaceful. And it had seen Jacob. A misunderstood touch night had fallen again. The stars were sharp and cold above the trees, but the fire near the cave crackled warmly. Jacob sat beside it, arms wrapped around his knees. The stew from earlier still filled his belly. The giantess lay nearby, her massive body curled like a mountain of warmth, breathing slow and steady. She didn't speak. She never did. But somehow he always knew what she was feeling. It was in the way she looked at him, like he mattered, like he wasn't just a visitor, but something she needed. Earlier that day, Jacob had tried something new. He built a sling from vines and cloth to carry water easier. When the giantess saw it, her eyes lit up with interest. She knelt beside him and began helping, her giant fingers moving gently so she wouldn't break anything. Her size didn't scare him anymore. Not when she smiled like that. Not when she looked at him like he was the strange one. She had studied every part of him, his hands, his eyes, the way he walked. Not with hunger, but with fascination, like a child discovering a new animal, or something closer. That evening, as the fire grew low, Jacob stood and stretched. The giantess watched him, her golden eyes following his every movement. He stumbled slightly, his foot catching a stone. In an instant, she was there. She moved faster than he could blink. One massive hand wrapped around his body, stopping his fall. The other gently brushed his scraped arm. "Easy," he muttered. "I'm okay." But she didn't let go. Instead, she sat down with him, still cradled in her arms, pressing him softly against her chest. Jacob froze. Her heartbeat was huge, like distant drums. Her skin was warm. Her scent was like crushed flowers in soil. She held him there, humming low, slow sounds, not words, but comfort. Her arms were strong, but careful. Her hands could crush steel, but she used them to protect him, not harm him. Jacob slowly relaxed in her hold. He wasn't afraid. He looked up at her. Her face wasn't smiling. It was soft, thoughtful, a little sad. That's when he realized something. This wasn't about curiosity anymore. It was about connection. She wasn't just keeping him safe. She needed to hold someone, to feel closeness again. After all those lonely years in the forest, she just wanted contact. Jacob gently placed a hand on her arm. She flinched, just a little, then looked down at him. He smiled, and for a second, her whole face lit up with emotion. She leaned forward slowly and with great care, pressed her forehead gently against his. Her eyes closed. Jacob closed his too. There were no words, but none were needed. This moment was clearer than any language. Later, as she slept beside the fire, Jacob sat awake thinking. She hadn't tried to eat him, she hadn't hurt him, she had saved him. Again and again. And now she held him like someone precious, like something rare. Maybe even beautiful. Jacob's heart beat faster. Was it possible? Could an alien so large, so different, feel something like that? Could she love? Was he imagining it? He looked at her sleeping face. A faint smile touched her lips as if dreaming something sweet. And then he whispered aloud, "You didn't catch me to trap me. You caught me so I wouldn't leave, but out beyond the trees." Something else had caught their scent. The other shadow moved quietly through the jungle. It was bigger than her, darker, and it was hungry, learning to speak with eyes. The jungle was calm again. Jacob woke early, the sky still painted with soft pink and orange light. He stretched his arms and turned toward the giantess, expecting her to still be asleep. But she was already up, sitting, cross-legged by the stream, watching the water flow. She looked peaceful, but something in her face had changed. Quiet, tense, as if she knew something was coming. Jacob joined her, holding a smooth stone in his hand. Over the past few days, they had been drawing together, using rocks, sticks, even crushed berries to create pictures in the dirt. It had become their language. Today, he drew a simple figure, a small human beside a giant, a smile between them. Then he added a heart shape in the middle. She watched. Then slowly she picked up a long twig and drew something new. 2 giant figures, one crossed out, one alone, and next to that, a small figure. Him. Then she pointed to herself. Then to him. Then to the heart. Jacob understood. She was telling him everything. Her people were gone. She was the last. But now, she had him. Jacob felt a lump in his throat. She wasn't just being kind. She wasn't just keeping him alive. She had chosen him. Later that day, she brought something new from the forest, a long piece of golden cloth with strange runes along the edges. It shimmered under the light like silk. She knelt and gently tied it around Jacob's shoulders like a cape. He laughed softly. "You're dressing me up now?" She smiled proudly. To her it was more than fabric. It was claiming. It was bonding. But something still lingered in the air. That evening, as they prepared food together, Jacob noticed how often she looked toward the trees. Her eyes, once relaxed, now scanned the jungle constantly. At first he thought she was just being careful, but then he saw it too. Tracks. Not hers. Not his. Something else. Much bigger. The prints were deep and fresh, and they weren't alone anymore. That night, Jacob tried to draw the new tracks in the dirt, hoping to ask her if she knew what they meant. But she didn't draw back. She simply reached out and held his hand gently in her giant fingers. Her face was serious now. No smile. Only quiet emotion in her eyes. Jacob looked up at her. No words came, but her eyes spoke volumes. "Stay close. Don't wander. I'll protect you." Jacob nodded. They didn't need sounds anymore, they could speak with eyes. When the stars appeared, she lay beside the fire, curled in a protective shape, one arm slightly extended so Jacob could sleep near her. He rested against her side, feeling the slow rise and fall of her breathing. She whispered something in her own language, a soft hum, a low tone. He didn't know the words, but it felt like a lullaby. Jacob had never felt more safe. Not in his ship, not on Earth, only here with her, the last of her kind, and now, maybe the first of something new. But far beyond the glowing trees, the jungle trembled. A second giant, black as night and twice as tall, walked in silence. It didn't bring food, or warmth, or kindness. It followed the scent of human. And it wasn't coming to talk. The rescue and the cling. The jungle was too quiet. Not peaceful. Wrong. Birds stopped singing. Leaves stopped rustling. Even the wind felt like it was holding its breath. Jacob woke before sunrise. The fire had gone out. The giantess wasn't beside him. His heart jumped. He stood up, scanning the clearing. "Hello?" he whispered. "Where are you?" Then a branch snapped in the trees, but it wasn't her. It was something else. Heavy footsteps, deep growls, and then a massive black shadow moved between the trees. Jacob froze. Another giant, but this one was different. Taller, broader, covered in scars. Its skin was stone gray, its eyes blood red, and its mouth was open, dripping with bones. Jacob stepped back. It sniffed the air and turned its head toward him. Eyes locked. It had found what it came for. Suddenly, a roar from behind. She was there. The lavender giantess burst through the trees like a storm. Her spear, made from sharpened metal and vines, gleamed in the rising light. She slammed into the dark giant with a crash that shook the ground. Jacob dove behind a log. The two giants clashed in the clearing, throwing punches that cracked the earth, swinging arms like trees, roaring like thunder. She fought like a wild flame, fast, fierce, and focused. But the dark one was stronger. It grabbed her by the arm and slammed her into the side of a boulder. She cried out, a sound Jacob had never heard before, not from her. Pain. Jacob's heart raced. He had to do something. But what could he do? He was small, weak, Nothing compared to these monsters. Still, he ran toward the fight, waving a burning stick from the fire pit. "Hey, over here!" he shouted. The dark giant turned, distracted for a moment. And that was all she needed. The lavender giantess lunged and drove her spear deep into its side. The beast howled and stumbled back, crashing into a tree, snapping it like a twig. Bleeding, it turned and vanished into the jungle, crashing through the trees in defeat. Silence. Jacob ran to her side. She was on her knees, breathing hard, her arms trembling. Blood ran down her shoulder. She had won, but just barely. Jacob touched her hand. "Are you okay?" She looked at him with tired eyes, then did something completely unexpected. She grabbed him, fast, desperate, and pulled him into her arms. Not rough, desperate. She clutched him against her chest, her whole body shaking. Jacob didn't struggle. He understood. She was terrified, not for herself, for him. He had seen it in her face during the fight. Every time the dark giant moved toward him, she fought harder, wilder, because she couldn't lose him. Not after being alone so long, not after finally finding someone who didn't run. Her grip softened. She made a soft, low sound. Not quite a word, but full of emotion. Jacob rested his head against her shoulder and whispered, "I'm here. I'm okay." She nodded slowly, then lifted her hand and pointed to the sky. He looked up. A rescue ship. Human. Floating above the forest in the clouds. A soft light beamed down. They had found him. Soon after, the ship landed near the edge of the jungle. Rescue soldiers stepped out with scanners, medkits, and weapons ready. They spotted Jacob and stopped in shock. He was sitting calmly in the lap of a giant alien woman, and she wasn't hurting him. She was holding him like a child, like something loved. The captain of the rescue team blinked. "Do we attack?" Jacob stood. No. The soldiers raised their weapons anyway. The giantess growled low, but didn't move. Jacob stepped in front of her. "If you shoot her," he said, "you'll have to shoot me first." A long silence followed. One of the soldiers spoke. "Is she dangerous?" Jacob looked up at her. She was watching him, eyes full of pain, hope, fear. He shook his head. "No. She saved my life. More than once. She attacked something earlier," the soldier added. "She was protecting me." Finally, the captain lowered his weapon. "All right, no harm." Jacob turned to her and smiled. "It's okay. They won't hurt you." She didn't understand the words, but she saw his eyes. She saw his choice. And for the first time in a long, long time, she felt safe too. Not to devour, but to keep forever. The rescue ship hovered quietly above the trees. Its engines hummed like a distant storm. Inside, Jacob sat near the window, watching the jungle below grow smaller and smaller as the ship slowly lifted into the sky. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't relieved. He was hurting, because she wasn't with him. Back on the forest floor, the giantess stood at the edge of the clearing. The soldiers had insisted she couldn't come aboard. Too large, too dangerous, too unpredictable. They didn't understand. Jacob had argued, begged, but she had stopped him. She had placed her giant hand on his chest, softly, and shaken her head. Then she pointed to herself, then to the jungle, then to him, and pressed her hand flat over her heart. Jacob had known what she meant. "This is your sky. This is my ground. But I will keep you here, forever." Inside. Now, in the sky, Jacob stared out at the clouds. The soldiers talked in low voices behind him, but he didn't hear them. His mind was still with her warmth, her scent, her silence, and the way she had looked at him in the end. Like he was the most important thing she had ever held. 3 days later, Jacob gave his report. The Galactic Peace Committee listened carefully as he spoke of the crash. the survival, the jungle, and her. He didn't call her a monster. He didn't call her a creature. He called her by the name he had given her. Velna. He showed them the drawings they had made together, the symbols, the shared meals, the fight, the rescue. Some believed him. Some did not, but Jacob didn't care. He hadn't told the story to be believed. He told it because she deserved it. Weeks passed. They offered to send him back to Earth, to award him medals, to write books about his survival. He refused them all. Instead, he asked for one thing: a small ship, a quiet one, enough supplies to survive, and permission to return. They thought he was crazy, but they gave it to him. He flew alone. Back across the stars, back to the planet where it all began. When he landed in the jungle clearing again, everything was quiet. The vines had grown back. The fire pit was cold. The drawings were faded. He waited. For hours. Then, footsteps. He turned. She was there. Still tall, still fierce, still beautiful, but her eyes glowed when she saw him. She didn't run. She didn't roar. She simply stepped forward and knelt down, and without a word, she opened her arms. Jacob dropped his bag and walked into them. She held him the way only she could. Not like a toy, not like prey, not like a pet, but like someone she'd been waiting for. That night, they sat under the stars again. She rested her giant head near the fire. He leaned against her arm, drawing new shapes in the dirt. He looked up at her. "You didn't want to eat me?" he whispered. "You just didn't want to be alone?" She didn't answer, but she reached down and gently pressed her fingertip to his chest right over his heart, then to her own. Jacob smiled and said the only words that truly mattered. "I'm yours." And far above them, in the sky filled with stars, the world kept turning. Stories were told, songs were sung, and in the deepest part of the forest, a giantess once feared, once misunderstood, held her tiny human close, not to devour but to keep forever.